As the general concern of cybersecurity threats in the US is rising due to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, it is top of mind for both businesses and consumers to protect themselves. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq and host of Trade Talks. Joining me for this segment, we have JD Sherman, CEO of Dashlane, an app for both individuals and businesses offering a password management solution that is as easy to use as it is secure. JD, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
What steps should businesses take to protect themselves for cyber threats?
I think it's an important question these days because businesses are spending $200+ billion a year on security software. And of course, technology is really important here, but a lot of the problem is kind of a human problem. So a lot of the steps that you have to take are sort of cultural and they're people-based. You know, some of the things that we say are there's some basic, simple best practices to follow, like, password hygiene. Use strong passwords, rotate them often, don't reuse them, don't share them with your friends, kind of the basic password hygiene that we all know we should do. Sometimes it's hard to make ourselves do it, but that's one of the basics. The other thing that's really important is multi-factor authentication. You should use a dual-factor authentication approach. It's another layer of support. And then the third thing that I always recommend is you got to kind of monitor the threats and monitor whether your passwords have been breached. There are ways to do that on the dark web, et cetera. And all that sounds like a lot to bite off. That's sort of the problem that we are trying to attack at Dashlane. One tool that brings all that together, makes it really simple to deploy those basic sort of human-based best practices.
So JD, let's talk about that. What tools can secure data access and accounts?
Yeah, well, whether it's Dashlane or anybody's, I think everybody should be using a password manager, because what you do there is you remember one strong password, and then the password manager can manage every other login that you have with passwords that you can share with others, and they may not even need to know what the actual password is because of the way the system works and autofills. So you should use a password manager. As I mentioned, there are multi-factor authentication tools out there that you should use. You should consider using a single sign-on tool, which helps you manage the access, sort of minimize the surface area of potential breach and attacks by helping you manage the access that you give to employees. That's really important as well.
Yeah, we have single sign-on, and it makes life so much easier than having to remember all the different passwords for all the different apps that we use here. What are the implications of remote work, and why do authentication, identity, and access really need to become a daily part of our routine?
I think that's really the key question, because the paradigm for security has changed. And when I say the paradigm goes way back to sort of castle walls. It used to be the way you protected the security of your people and your assets was you built an infrastructure, you built walls around around what you needed to protect, and people came into those walls every day in the office and everything. It's hard to do that today. Not everybody works in an office, so they're using their own devices on remote networks, et cetera. Maybe not even they're all your employees, right? The gig economy is something that's even bigger, and you're giving access to people who are not even part of your team in terms of an employee standpoint. You used to worry about people bringing their own devices and the security of that. Now they're really bringing their own apps. People use all sorts of SaaS applications. Shadow IT is a thing. You're not even aware of the kind of things that all of your employees are doing. So the paradigm has shifted, I think, from sort of protecting the walls of your castle to more of protecting the problem of the gate, how you let people in. And that's a problem about authentication and access more so than infrastructure.
And cyber threats impact more than just productivity for businesses, JD. Why is being proactive, and I think that's really the key here, with cybersecurity protection and not reactive really the key?
Yeah, I always say that cybersecurity is a little bit like insurance. If you wait to buy it till when you need it, it's going to be too late. It's just so you have to be proactive on things like this. And the challenge that businesses face is there's sort of this trade-off that's always existed between sort of security and convenience. And so that's been the sort of resistance point of being proactive and building security into your culture. Is like, it's inconvenient. Like if you're told by your employees, rotate all your passwords every 3 months and all this kind of stuff, you're like, that's a big headache. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to remember one password. What we try to do at Dashlane, and a lot of companies are realizing, is you have to make that security easy. You have to sort of make it adoptable by your entire team without adding too much of a headache. You have to sort of build it into the workflow of the way your business operates. So that's where I think proactivity comes into, is think about the workflow that your business operates with and build security right into that workflow.
And finally, how is the technology landscape changing, and what is the industry doing to help?
Yeah, technology is interesting because it's always kind of an arms race, right? You hear about all the great new security technology, and there's certainly been a lot of advances there. And then the next thing you hear about is ransomware as a service, because the technology exists on both sides, or the hackers. It's sort of always going to be an arms race there. So it's security technology is important, but it's only part of the challenge, as we were talking about. I think the real thing where technology can come to bear is, can technology help make it easier for you as a company or you as an individual to build security into your culture, into the way you live and work going forward? That's really, I think, the challenge. That's sort of the new frontier. And as I started talking about it, 80+% of the attacks happen through compromised passwords or compromised credentials. So the first thing you should really think about is closing that gate, if you will, like helping your employees manage their identity and authentication and access.
All right, JD, we appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thanks a lot.